What is up, guys? It's Pokella. Keep in mind, I stutter a lot, okay? So, this is gonna be a totally raw and uncut video. I am not gonna edit this or anything. I wanted to talk about my life and how I got to where I'm at. So, I'm 21 currently. I was born and raised down here, in Hawaii, in Waianae. And for the people that know Waianae, it's more ghetto, more than luxury, obviously. And, um, like, it depends how you look at it. It's beautiful, but at the same time, there's a lot of cons more than pros, right? Um, and so, like growing up too, I would grow up in a, I grown up in a toxic household, and the environment turned me into a bad person in the future. And, like that's one thing that I've noticed. And I don't use that as an excuse for who I am, but however, you know, it's a different it's strong, like it's such a it's such a sunken feeling growing up like that when you feel like you're not going to make it out anywhere because you're surrounded by it, right? And one thing that I always go by is how can we judge someone's choices if we don't know their options? You know, sorry, I was reading that. How can we judge someone's choices if we don't know their options? And what that means to me is like the way that people live their life, we can't and we're in no place to judge because we don't know if that's the only option that they have. And like growing up in a household that was poor, that literally came from the slums, like I definitely seen that. Like there would always be people that would judge me based off of the clothes I wore to school, or the shoes that I wore, or the things that I bring, or my backpack was a cheap backpack. Not that it mattered to me, but like coming from that and being around the normality of like people like making fun of things like that, it like definitely makes you aim and accomplish more. So, first things first, I appreciate everyone that hated me as a kid. Um, but you know, my my mom and dad, I lost my dad when I was 4 months old, and my mom was in jail when she gave birth to me, and she was on drugs. So, when I was born as a baby, I didn't come out of the womb crying. I was stiff and like I was dying. I was in rehab for months. Um, and like honestly, I grew up without a mom or dad figure, and I was more codependent on my grandfather as my dad and my grandmother as my mom. Um, and like not the grandmother and grandfather that I'm talking about. Like my parent figures to me were my adoptive grandparents that adopted me. So my real grandparents, my real grandfather, he was still an amazing person. He passed away when I was 12, so I didn't get to really know him as much as I would have wanted to, to get to this age. However, my grandmother, like, I feel like she was, like a little bit of like an evil person, and it showed me and it corrected me on who I completely don't want to be, and man, like the type of things that she did and went through, and um I don't know, like man, like it makes me question it, like there's a difference between abuse and like discipline, and like some kids, like I totally believe in whooping their ass with a belt type shit, but like I'm talking about like like I'm not even gonna get too far deep into it. It's really, really emotional, but that like really fucking hurts me, So anyway, you know, I, child support checked up on me when I was like 13 years old or 14, and I told them like, like I don't feel safe here anymore, to be honest with you, and I was just scared to ever say anything, right? And um, that's when they asked me like, well, where else could you really go? Because if you don't have anyone else that you trust, you're gonna have to come with us to a home. And I said, well, my grandfather and my grandmother, that lived in Nanakuli. And how I knew them was when I was, an infant, my real grandmother was in her neighborhood, at her neighbor's house, asking them, like, oh yeah, like we're just looking for someone to watch Landon because we're gonna go to a wedding, and my adoptive grandparents that we just all didn't know that would one day be my adoptive grandparents were coincidentally next door, and they're like, "Oh, well, I heard that someone needs a babysitter and I love kids, and my adoptive grandparents, like they couldn't have kids. My grandmother was infertile, so I was basically their like child sent from heaven if you think about it, but like that's how I knew them. They would take care of me. So like after that wedding, they would see me more and more whenever they needed to like babysit me. And then after a while, I went to like weekends, like every single weekend. And then it went to weekdays. And then eventually I was there like half of the week, back and forth. And that would be, soon to be my grandparents too. So, like that's kind of the things that I've went through and seen, going off of all of this. And any which way, once I called CPS to get me out of there and I got to my grandparents' house, it was difficult. It was difficult for them to adopt me, especially because I was a kid and I didn't know what I had to do to go through it. And CPS just kept telling me, like, yeah, like, we're gonna have to take you away, like you don't just get to pick and choose where you want to be at. And I told them, like, okay, well, if you guys take me away, I'm gonna run away. And they're not legally gonna handcuff me to a wall, what the fuck. So yeah, so I basically told them that. And the day that they were gonna come and get me, I literally ran away and they didn't see me for like 2 weeks. And CPS was like, just come home, we're not gonna take you away, you can stay here. So they basically like gave into it under stress. um and like that was like one of the come ups to my being was like I needed just somebody to believe in me and my dreams and my goals, and that was my adoptive grandparents. And so this is going to be video one. I'm going to make a part two in a few days, like some things I need to process and just think about on how to word it correctly. Other than that, yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed this little entourage clip of my upbringing and childhood.